In all my years of experience of 38 years, bottom line is this: everybody knows what they want. I really believe that. If you sit with people long enough and you allow them to really, really connect and talk and really, just be there without anybody trying to give them advice or trying to make them see what they should do, then what happens is something comes alive in people and they start to basically remember who they are.
Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm Makena Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Makena. How are you?
I'm good. You're everyone today. You're everyone I can see, but I know there's other people
everyone I can see too. So hello, everyone else who we can't see, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome back to another episode. Today, we wanted to talk about tapping into your inner wisdom. So how do you really tune in, tap in, and get often it's clarity or answers about something or direction or whatever that might be for you? What is it that you normally observe around this, Gigi?
Yeah, what I see often is people trying to figure it out in their head, right? They've got lots of ideas. They're trying to make their life or their plan around what's in their mind, which just makes sense, right? Because as we go out and we do things and we gather information, of course, we go, okay, now let's make our plan. It's from our head. But what we want to talk about today is that distinction of before you get to that point of the plan, it's really good to tap into your inner wisdom. And I think what we're going to share today, we've shared in different ways in the different episodes, but we continue to bring this point in because it has so many different subtleties to it. And it is truly one of the things that I think is very different about what we do in our work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I really experienced this for myself when I was trying to get clear on, well, first of all, what the panic attacks were about back when I was having those in 2016, 2017. What was going on? Why was I having that experience? And I had a sense that there was something that needed to change and probably around my career, but I was really struggling. And so I actually went out and hired different coaches. I thought, okay, I wasn't going to go to you. You're my mom. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. So I went and I joined a mastermind and I did some different programs and I was like, I'm going to, figure out what I want to do. And I remember very distinctly this experience of being on a call with one of the facilitators, and they were great programs. And I got a lot out of them in different ways. But I was on a call with one of the facilitators, and I remember having this feeling like she kept suggesting things or having different ideas about how I could grow. And you would think that would be helpful, right? I was in an online marketing business at the time. I was copywriting and an online marketing strategy. And, so we talked about if I grew that and how I would do that. And I was pretty clear, like that wasn't it. I knew on some level that wasn't the direction. And we talked about some other things, but it just felt like a lot of like ideas, but none of it really landed somehow. And I couldn't really figure out why, it seems like that would have been the solution. And it wasn't until you really supported me. And, we've told that story before on the podcast where you asked me questions. We had this experience over the course of a couple of days. You asked me questions, you listened in such a way, and I don't exactly know how you want to describe that, but you created this space where it was just like, wow, I saw so clearly what it is I wanted, what the direction was. So that's what we want to talk about is how did that happen, or how does that happen? How can you connect into your inner wisdom? So from this lens, Gigi, of tapping into your inner wisdom, what was happening there that was different?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, like you had mentioned, there are so many amazing coaches. And, I think there are different kind of coaches for different points of where you are in your business or your life or what you want to create. I think for you, you were really looking to make that transition or shift. And then also a lot of times why people come to me is they already are very, very successful. But same thing, there's something deep inside they know that's not being actualized. There's something in them that they want to bring out into the world and into their businesses. And so in the way that I worked with you, like you said, is I practiced a skill that I, teach all of the coaches we certified and everything is, to sit in that seat of the coach and to ask open-ended questions and to be curious. And really, really, I did not put what I saw in there at all. I waited because for me and all my years of experience of 38 years, bottom line is this, everybody knows what they want. I really believe that. If you sit with people long enough and you allow them to really, really connect and talk and really, just be there without anybody trying to give them advice or trying to make them see what they should do, then what happens is something comes alive in people and they start to basically remember who they are, And so in that process of those few days, that's all I did is I listened deeply and then I would give you feedback. And my feedback is always, where did you light up? Where did I see the most energy? But again, when I would share that with you, it wasn't to try to then make a plan or anything, because we need that time to just sit in the curiosity, to start to discover, to start to see what we want. Now you had a guide and, those of you who are listening, maybe you don't have a guide. So we really have to talk about how do you start to do that on your own as well. But I think we share a couple stories first.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
it's so funny. I was just on our mastermind call this morning for our Wealthy World Changers mastermind and demonstrating one of the processes the women were going to do with each other. And so I was coaching one of the women and she said, it was so interesting because I would ask a question and then I would wait. And she would at first say, I don't know, or she wasn't sure, or whatever. And I would just wait, or I would ask the question in a different way. And she was like, it was so interesting, like those spaces, that space you created and the way you would ask the questions, then like I would see, right? And it was such a different experience than normally when we're having a conversation with someone and they're like, well, what about this? Or, you could do this, and people mean well when they do that, right? And there's a time and a place for brainstorming and for ideating. But when you're really looking for that deeper clarity about something, and it might be like Gigi's saying, for me, it was a career pivot. For some people, it might not be. It might be some bigger dream, or you just feel there's something that you want to shift or change, or a way that you want to evolve and you're just not sure what it is. So in that, that this really is a different approach, I think, than most people have experienced much or do experience, and especially in their day-to-day conversations and often in coaching containers as well. So, and there's a time and a place for strategy. We'll talk about that in a moment. But first, I really want to hear the story of how you changed a man's life in like a matter of, I don't know, an hour or something.
So it was 1 minute, and I've had this happen many times where people reach out to me and say in one conversation or in 1 minute, oh my gosh, I saw everything. Because again, like I said, I'm in that space of curiosity. And then always in my feedback, if I see where somebody lights up, I give that feedback. And, and we always I tease my clients and tell them I don't listen to them. I say, I only watch for your lights. And in those lights, that's where I follow. So I had an experience several years ago. My daughter, Tiffany, invited me to a men's brunch in Austin, and they'd never invited women before. So the two of us went, and men had the Sunday brunch, and they talked about everything. And so everybody was going around introducing themselves, and I introduced myself, and I said very simply, Basically, what I do is I help people see, who they are or what they want or what's the next evolution of their business by just basically asking them open-ended questions and then watching for where they light up. And when they light up, again, I share that with them because that is tapping into their aliveness. And when they tap into their aliveness, that is the window or the key to the direction in that moment. Your aliveness can change in different times. And so I talked about it. I help my clients follow that to create exceptional lives and businesses and families and everything. That's all I said. Yeah. And you want to read the note that he sent me? Yeah.
When did he send this to you?
He sent it to me. Well, first of all, what happened is my daughter was at the what's the Ryan Dice big what's it called?
Traffic conversion?
Yeah, traffic and conversion. That's it. Yeah. She went to that event. I think it was like 2 months later. And he came up to her. He said, "Listen, remember me?" He said, "I just want to tell you that day when I listened to your mother, it changed my life." And so then she said, "Well, you should share it with her." And so a couple of months later, that time he shared it with me. It had only been a couple of months. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is what he wrote. He said, "When we met, I was suffering through a severe burnout that ultimately lasted about 18 months. I had tried everything I could to recover, but nothing was working. You and I met only briefly, but something you said really resonated with me. You talked about your work helping entrepreneurs identify what brings them energy and aliveness. Though I'd heard people talk about doing what lights you up before, the way you described it was different. I left that brunch and immediately began making changes. As a result, I went from feeling disoriented, partly depressed, and irritated with myself, to feeling full of energy and excitement toward my next project. As I write to you now, I am about to sell 50% of my business and transition from CEO into the product visionary role. Then, with my extra time, I will be pursuing what I believe is my calling in life. I'm sure you weren't expecting this, but I just wanted to say thank you. You made a huge impact on me in our short conversation." Andy, entrepreneur in Austin.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this is after this, because I reached out to him, he ended up selling his business actually and making far more than he ever thought was possible. And then he transitioned because I went and met with him in Austin. We had coffee one day and he transitioned into his next thing and was super, super happy about it.
Yeah. I love that story.
Yeah.
So that just really illustrates this approach of tapping into your inner wisdom, and the way that you do that is through this lens of aliveness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Remember, we said every moment your vitality is either increasing or decreasing. And when it's increasing, you want to pay attention to that. We have several processes where we really walk our clients through that so they start to really build something that is in alignment with them. Because that's, I think, the distinction we're trying to make here is there are so many different business models. There's so many different ways you can go in your business and in your life. And if I come in and I just put one of those on you, or, I'm in a group and I put the same thing on everybody, and it's not, first of all, the right timing. And second of all, it's just not the right thing for how you want to live. So that first part of discovering, what do you want? What's the lifestyle you want? What's the way you want to earn? What really resonates? What brings you alive? When you talk about it, you're energized, you have vitality, or if it's a certain product you want to create, where is it in the world where you feel like yourself and you're the most alive? Because those are the little pieces of your puzzle that start to connect you to that inner wisdom. And then from there, you can find the right system, business plan, all those different things.
That's so key, because there is a time and a place, like we said before, for strategy. There is a time and a place for action steps, all of that. We help our clients with all of that. Yeah. It's just a matter of, it's not where we begin, because there's a clarity that needs to come first. So I want you to talk a little bit more about timing, because you just mentioned like there's a timing to things. And I also feel, I was reflecting on that earlier as I was sharing my story, that was a piece of the puzzle as well. Because I do remember with certain coaches, like seeing glimpses of a vision, but it felt too big maybe, or it was too far off of where I was, or I could not see in any way, shape, or form how I would get from where I was to where I wanted to be. So timing, I feel like there's an important piece here. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think the timing is that it has to really resonate. There's always a great thing about stretching yourself. If I really want to do something and I sit around and I wait the next 5 years and I don't do it, and I believe that's also why we hire guides and coaches and people who support us to get off and get going. But I will sometimes see somebody have an idea and then they'll go out and then they'll start building a business around it. And it didn't have time to percolate enough to where they really know that this is what they want to do. So they build something and then they're in the middle of it and they go, oh my gosh, this is not what I signed up for, and there's many parts of this that aren't really right. They're not in alignment. And so I think it's really important. We always say to start a project around something. If you see something and you're curious about it, you feel like, this might be my next thing, instead of going out there, building a big business, getting investment money, all of that, create a small project, do a project, make it have a beginning, middle, and end. And that will give you so much feedback to see, are you moving in the right direction? It also gives you the opportunity to see, okay, how do I tweak this? Is maybe we thought it was this way, but we're going to change and we're going to do it a different way. And I think that is such a successful model, because then you haven't committed to something so big that then, if you don't follow through with it, then you feel like a failure. And I've watched a lot of people go through this and also lose a lot of money, and it really hurt them in terms of they feel like they failed. And so it makes them hesitate to go into their next thing. So highly recommend timing is, if you have something, create some kind of project. We're doing that right now, Makena, with our beloved milestones, right? We started out with a little baby step. We know where we want to go, but first we said, hey, let's do this and see what kind of feedback we get. And then we see, where do we want to put our energy next?
Can you share what that is? Because people probably have no idea.
Oh, yeah. So Beloved Milestones is a company that the 6 of us have started, right? My kids and myself. And that is meaningful celebrations. So it's making celebrations that, like bachelorette parties or bridal showers, things like that, instead of them just being a celebration. And a lot of times with bachelorette parties, it's just about like partying and things like that. But then you don't really connect with who's there. And a lot of times I think the person that is getting married or is having the bridal shower.
Or it could be a 60th birthday party or
a party. We have a lot of different ideas. They don't get really connected or the recognition. And then also the people that are there don't really get to share how much that person means to them. So we've developed a lot of different ways to have more conscious and meaningful celebrations, to where people, it becomes a moment in time that you will remember for the rest of your life, but not just because it was fun, but because it really touched your heart. Yeah. What else do you have to say about it?
Yeah, no, that's basically the idea. Gigi's always been so amazing about bringing more meaning into our celebrations as a family. And so we started doing this for our bachelorettes, all 4 of your daughters, me and my sisters are married now. And that's all been in the last few years. And so we all had bachelorette parties. And then we really brought this into those experiences where it was more of a little gathering and we had meaningful shares and different things that we did, different activities to really make it a really memorable experience in a different way. We still had the fun party too, but we also had these experiences of, people sharing their wishes for us or answering certain kinds of questions to go deeper. And we did that for your 60th birthday, right? That we, created a whole kind of, whatever you want to call it, ceremony or something like that. And we sat down. I remember we played music from each decade of your life, and we did these little things and shared different wishes again, and visions, and also memories. And so some of these practices and experiences, you had the idea to turn them into, first of all, these free guides. So if you're listening to this, we started with just one because, of course, start a project, like Gigi said. So it's belovedmilestones.com/bachelorette. And that's our meaningful bachelorette party guide. And it's free. And that's our first little piece to see, okay, now we test it and we see what's the reception like. And then we'll take a different kind of celebration and test that one. And then we see how's the, what are people wanting more of? And is it something we're enjoying, and so on and so forth. So that's a great example, like you're saying, Gigi, of taking something and really trying it out before you go sort of full steam ahead and decide this is the thing.
Yeah.
So what about, because you said something earlier around, so we were talking about timing and really taking a project. And this is true, by the way. I mean, some people might be listening and they're not necessarily trying to start a new business or something like that, right? They're wanting to get clear on something else. Maybe it's an evolution of themselves or their personal lives or something like that. So I'm trying to think how this would apply in that case, if it's not necessarily, I mean, it could be like something like you've always wanted to write a book, or, you want to get more into your creativity. Let's say that was it. So, you want to get more into your creativity, you could still apply the same principle, right? Where even if it's not starting a business, you try some different things and you try them on to see what really taps into that for you.
Yeah. And same thing, you go and you try some things. Maybe you've had things in the back of your mind. I have an old friend that I reconnected with recently, and she was actually at our workshop in Sonoma. And then she said, she wrote me and said, after the workshop, I went and signed up for singing lessons because I've wanted to do that my whole life. And so you'll have those little nudges in your brain. And so you go out there and you try them, and see, is that something that you really want to add to your life? And so those little things, again, she starts singing again, that will really change her. I know she loves to sing. Who knows, down the road, she might put on a little show, so it really allows you to, again, start to build your life in your time in such a way where you're spending time doing things that really are in alignment with you. And when you do that, here's the thing, when you follow that aliveness, the next step is to follow your curiosity in whatever brings you alive. So if you, let's say, for example, like you said, want to write a book and it's around a certain topic, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to then use my curiosity and go out there and see what other books are written about that, or, who else is doing this, or how's that work? So after that spark is in you, then you follow that energy into the thing that you are curious about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's kind of like dive deeper, explore, and follow the line of that curiosity, that aliveness. And this is really important because, as we always talk about, clarity comes through the action. So that your inner wisdom, it doesn't always come as a breakthrough clarity moment where the clouds suddenly part and everything becomes clear. I mean, in a sense, that was my experience when you worked with me, but with that initial turning point moment. But that's because I was working with a, 30 something year master coach at that time. And you were really guiding me through. And so it was this intensive kind of 2-day experience we had together that you lead these. They're called soul reveals. And so in that, yes, I had a kind of a clouds parting moment, and it doesn't mean everything stayed clear or that it was all stayed the same as I moved forward, but there was that moment. But it's not always going to be that way, right? Or even when you work with people, sometimes it's like, it's glimpses, it's glimmers, it's the beginning, it's the aliveness, it's something. And then people begin to follow that thread, and then more reveals itself.
Right. Right. Yeah. Take the action, because we see so many times that people are waiting and waiting, and the action reveals everything to you, because like I said, if you move in a direction and you go, this really is not it. Just think of all the brain space that opens up that you're no longer wondering,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think people get so caught up in wanting the steps to be perfectly clear and laid out ahead of them. Or a lot of times I think it's the fear of failure, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Like, what happens if I fail? But that's sort of when you're setting yourself up to say, whatever I do, it has to be the right thing, or this has to be the thing. What would you say to someone about that? Because that comes up a lot when they tap into their inner wisdom and they think, well, they might get an answer, right? And they might be like, oh, well, I'm curious about this, or I have energy around this. But what if I do it and it doesn't work out? What if I fail?
Then you'll just be quicker on to the next thing, and again, you have to see timing wise. It depends on, do you have a job and you don't have the time? Then how do you start to carve out the time? But if it's just that it's fear, you have to look at it as you go for it. And when you go for it, if it doesn't work, then that just makes you so much quicker and closer to what it really is. If you leave it in the back of your mind and you wait for another year, again, it's in the back of your mind, it's running your life instead of you fully being present in your life and really, really going for what you want.
There's this concept. I went to a talk at an entrepreneur's retreat a few years ago, and I wish I remember what it was called, but it was like micro experiments, they called them, or micro, I don't know, iteration or something. And it's a concept in startups, and it's in design thinking. They talk about it, I believe. And the idea is to test, to get out there and try and almost to fail as quickly as you can at something. It's like, try it, see if it works. If it does, keep going. If it doesn't, switch. And to do that as quickly as possible, as much of that as possible, to then really it creates this momentum where a business or a project moves forward at such a different speed and with such a different energy than when people are, okay, we're going to make the whole plan. We're going to make the business plan. We're going to, put every step, and then we have to check it across all the departments. And then it's like the speed at which things happen then is very slow. And so it kind of reminds me of that. It's like, it's your own version of that.
Yeah. And when you use your curiosity, that's where your innovation comes from. And if you wait on it, a lot of times it loses energy. If you go for it, then what happens is, we've talked about this in other episodes, is the action and the actually going for it. When there is that energy, often opportunities will come out of nowhere for you, but if you wait and hold it and don't do it for 6 months, it has a very different energy to it. So in that, using your aliveness and using that curiosity, that is where you start to create the ideas and the innovations. And then when you act on those, you might meet the publisher that wants to publish your book when you're on the plane sitting there talking to somebody. I've had these kind of experiences so many times through my career, not by ever making a plan. My first book that was published in 2003 in Germany, I said, oh, I'd love to write a book. And then all of a sudden this woman walked into my life, said, have you written a book? I said, no. She went out, she got me a book deal. There was no plan to that whatsoever. The next time my book got published in all the other countries, same thing. It happened through these magical moments because I knew my desire and I was following my aliveness.
So tapping into your inner wisdom is about, what do you want? What's your desire? And then, like you're saying, following that aliveness. And sometimes we can really get to that on our own through self-reflection, through observation in our lives. You might know deep down and you just hadn't been really admitting it to yourself. And you might even be listening to this podcast episode going like, okay, I know what the next thing is, or I know what this, right? Or you might be sitting there going like, I still have no effing clue, right? You go out and you're not clear. So we're actually leading a masterclass at the time of this recording, it's I think 3 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks from now. And it's called The Unstoppable Woman. And it's about how do you really step into the version of you that goes after it and creates in every area of your life what you want, right? In your career or business, but also in your relationships and your personal life with yourself. So really becoming that unstoppable woman. And in that masterclass, we will take you through some exercises, some self-reflection to help you start to tap into that inner wisdom even more and really look at those deeper desires. And sometimes we need a space like that, or we need a coach, or we need a program, or whatever it might be, but this is free. So we recommend you all come to that. And the URL for that is wayofthemuse.com/unstoppable. wayofthemuse.com/unstoppable. So definitely would love to see you there.
I would say just too that, with the guide or assistance or coming to the masterclass is you can do it on your own. You could absolutely go for it. What we find with the people that we work with, or the women that we work with, is that when they step into our world, what happens is it accelerates that change. And for you, example, McKenna, I'd watched you for years, right? Going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And when I finally couldn't stand it anymore, and I thought I have to just interfere. And I did that. And what happened is within 2 to 3 days, it accelerated what could have taken you another.
Oh my God, I was in it for 2 years before that. So could have been there for a lot longer.
And we see that, we just finished our retreat. One of the women, just 2 months ago was like, okay, I'm going to get on stage. And she created an event and then she has a full page in the newspaper. All kinds of things happened for her when she made that commitment. And then she had the support of all of us and the other women. And she could have never imagined that happened within 8 weeks.
Yeah. It's to make this distinction. When we're talking about tapping into your inner wisdom, it's like, are you going around asking a bunch of people for advice and looking for answers outside of yourself? And this may even just be in the form of like, okay, well, is it this strategy or is it this strategy? Or you're looking at what everybody else is doing and what should I be doing? Or you're trying to make the plan and you're planning and planning and planning. These are all ways that we almost distract from really turning inward. And that's what we want to really encourage you to do. And that's what's really different about our approach in the way that we do work with people, whether it's in a free masterclass like this or in one of our programs, is giving you ways, tools, questions, guidance in such a way that you tune into you first and that you have these tools of how do you follow your aliveness? How do you follow your curiosity? Getting those moments of reflection where someone says to you, wow, you really lit up when you talked about that. And you go, oh, that's interesting, right? And it's like a ping for your subconscious mind. It brings something that was back here in the unconscious realm to the front and turns this light on. And you go, oh, maybe that's a piece for me, or maybe there's something there. And so it starts to create this clarity of desire, this clarity of what do you want? And to your point, Gigi, about your story with your books, is that's where magic starts to happen, or synchronicities or coincidences, whatever you want to call them, starts to happen is through that clarity and then taking the action. And then there's the moments where, okay, now we need the strategy. Now we need certain elements of a plan to get you there. But it all starts from this place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just noticing where you're coming from with it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, beautiful. Anything else you want to share on this, Gigi?
No, I think we, shared enough to where if you have something, like I said, create a project and go for it. And if not, get support. Come to our masterclass. It'll also wake you up to a few things. You'll see things differently. And just get out there and go for your dreams.
Yeah, as we're approaching, this is a time of year where people are really reflecting on, can you believe it's almost November, right? Or it is November. And people go, okay, wait, last year I said I wanted to do X, Y, Z. And it's not to be hard on ourselves, right? But to really go like, what I love this question is like, if you were an unstoppable woman, what would you be doing differently, or what would be different in your life? And if you imagine, what would that be? And then come to our masterclass and we'll talk to you about, more about that and how do you start to step into that, so that you make 2025, that you come to the end of next year and you're like, oh yeah, I did it, man. Either I really got some stuff started, I'm so proud of myself, or I really accomplished huge things that I've been wanting to do for a long time in whatever area of life that might be. So wayofthemuse.com/unstoppable. We'd love to see you there, have the opportunity to work with you live on a call, do Q&A. We're going to have a panel of women on the call that are doing incredible things in the world and sharing their stories of how they've become more and more unstoppable in their own lives and businesses. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
See you there. Bye-bye.
That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.